Hello YouTubers, this is Music Store here, and this is my review of the fourth James Bond film, Thunderball, released December 27th, 1965, which is important because this shows there was two Bond films released in 1965, directed by Terrance Young, which brings back Terrance Young, who did Dr. No and From Russia with Love. Guy Hamilton did Goldfinger, and then Terrance Young came back to Thunderball. And this one was pretty good. It grossed at the box office $141.2 million. Think about that 1965 terms. $141.2 million is a lot of money. And the movie ran 2 hours 10 minutes. Starring Sean Connery as James Bond, Claudine Auger as Domino, Adolfo Cile as Fargo, and Fiona Vopel as Luciana Paluzzi as Fiona Vopel. Now, what's the plot to this movie? Bond is sent to Nassau, Bahammas to recover two stolen warheads who were stolen by Spectre. Agent Largo, which is demanding payment for the return of them, in form of diamonds, I believe, if I remember correctly. Now, unlike the previous movie Goldfinger, which I think I forgot to mention in my review, is Goldfinger didn't have any parts to Spectre in it, which is kind of weird. Like, James Bond not dealing with Spectre. I know I've said, like, it's set up for the first few movies in Spectre before, and I forgot. Goldfinger had nothing to do with Spectre, which I think is what made it a very good movie. But there are some great points to this movie. Let's just get into some memorable scenes. There's a scene at the beginning where it shows a lady going to a funeral and all that, goes back to this mansion or whatever, and James Bond's sitting there. It's pretty much, it starts off a fight, and then during the fight you realize it's not a lady, it's a guy. Which for 1965, that is pretty risky. That actually shows risque James Bond right there. And yeah, he beats it up, and then the famous scene with the jetpack, which was pretty good. I love it. James Bond with the whole jetpack flying away, 1965, like, graphics of him just going away, hovering around. And, oh yes, I forgot to mention, I'm thinking about some of the more memorable scenes I probably will add in the description bar if I can find them on YouTube and everything. But yeah, after that, you get a scene with Largo and the reintroduction of Spectre, which over last film, I think some people who might have came in during Goldfinger might know who Spectre is at the time, so they wanted to reintroduce him, and I love this. It's not only does it show Largo, it shows Blofeld and his cat, and it also shows, oh, who else is there in this? I'm trying to remember, and it shows, like, how vast Spectre is and how they don't appreciate mistakes due to the fact that they thought someone was stealing from him and they electrocuted him in his chair. And then it shows a thing that, like, James Bond at a health spa or something and all this, and the guy, he's on this thing they call a rack, which stretches your spine and all that, and the guy comes into the room, turns it up as fast as it goes, and hopes to kill James Bond. Well, James Bond lives and all that, and he finds the guy, and he gets revenge on him by locking him in, I guess, a sauna box or some shit like that. But yeah, and then it has a part where it goes a little bit into the movie where they're explaining stuff, and then a pilot crashes his plane of warheads into the ocean, and then they take the warheads out, they get them, they put them in their thing, and then they kill the pilot because he wanted more money for what they were having him do. But there's some other parts to this that were really good. There was a scene where a car's chasing James Bond and Fiona's on a motorbike. And to explain this, Fiona is a bad person in this film or a villain in it. But no, she comes up from behind, shoots the car with rockets out of her motorbike, and I'm like, that is fucking sick. That's awesome. Then later on in the film, you get introductions to Domino and Largo interactions, and then you have an informant, which this is one of my favorite memorable scenes of this, is there's an informant there, and he's messed up. James Bond got the drop on him. And then James Bond sends him back to Largo. Largo looks at him, does not appreciate failure, and what does he do? He feeds him to a pool full of sharks. That's just devious, and that's what makes a good villain. Man, we need more villains like that nowadays. There are scenes where James Bond's underneath the boat trying to take photos of the boat and everything, and Largo and them spot him. And they drop grenades in there, in the water, and just trying to blow Bond out of the water, which is kind of a good scene. Then you have Bond's love scene with Fiona, where afterwards he's captured, he escapes, and he's shot, and they're tracking him, Fiona. He then starts dancing with the lady, and Fiona cuts in, and they're just about to shoot James Bond. Just as they fire, he turns Fiona into the bullet, which is actually kind of a really good scene. I really enjoy this movie. The music, like the fast-paced bongo drumming in it, was pretty good. Then it goes on for a bit. Then Bond has an underwater love scene with Domino, in which after she decides to help Bond. Now, out of the first few Bond movies I've watched, I'll say this, I know this is kind of off topic, but out of the ones I've watched, my god, was Domino hot back in the day. Just had to say it. After the love scene, they're on the beach and all that, and she agrees to help Bond. And then there's this great underwater fight, and this is one of the parts I'll actually get into quite a depth. The fight underwater was like 20 minutes, it felt like, but this had action everywhere. Like, as much as you could do underwater, it's like, bam, they're shooting each other with spear guns, there's hand-to-hand knife fighting, there's all this stuff and everything. The only thing missing was sharks. I really wish sharks would have been there, because that would have made the scene even better. And it worked so well. You had, like, the Coast Guard was there, you had all this other type stuff there that really worked very, 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 very well. And then it comes to the final scene where Bond fights Largo and everything. And yeah, this was a decent movie. What is my final thoughts on this movie, Thunderball with James Bond? It was good. If you're going by terms of how much it made, you have to say, at this point, it's the best James Bond of all time. If you go money-wise, if you go plot-wise, it was very good, very solid. And this is where people sort of run in. And I also forgot to mention the Eon Beginning, which was sung by Tom Jones, which was actually pretty good. I cared a lot for this movie. In terms of going back and watching it, I'll always go back and watch Thunderball. It was just a good movie. And my final grade for the film is I have to give it an A+. When you make $141.2 million, people must have gone back and seen it many, many, many times, because this film was actually very good. And, oh yes, I forgot to also mention, it sort of started, I think, a partnership, like back in Goldfinger, with the Mustang. Because you've seen the Ford Mustang in Goldfinger, you see it in Thunderball, you see it, I believe, in Her Majesty's Secret Service, I'm not sure, and you do see it in Diamonds Are Forever. But, for now, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my review of James Bond's fourth film from 1965, Thunderball. This is music horror. Probably going to do maybe another one pretty soon, but peace.